Hi, my name is Darren, and I have a cosmic story for you.
Hi, I'm Drew. Kate Winslet was not on the Titanic, but I'll tell you about a bunch of other Kates who were.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and I have a story about a science classroom that was a little off-center.
What does all this have to do with the word class? Find out in this episode of History Bluffs. Welcome to another episode of History Bluffs. It's where truth is stranger than fiction. And I want to welcome to the show right now, it's your host, it's Alan!
Hello! Welcome. It's time for yet another episode of History Bluffs, where truth is stranger than fiction. You can see our shows on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. You can hear them on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, and
ICQ, and...
What?
Okay.
There's more?
We're streaming binary to an IRC server in Latin America.
Might be on MySpace for all I know. I don't know. Adam, you just heard our tech Adam. How are you, Adam?
Hey, I'm good. I'm happy to be here supporting. I got the sights and the sounds.
Well, good. We've got sights and sounds too, since we're streaming live video right now on all those places that I just mentioned. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what else I should be mentioning right about now is our rules of the game.
Oh, we got rules? Of course we got rules. It's a game show. Here, I'm going to bring up the rules card. We can read those for our audio only listeners.
I can, and yes, those of you who are not seeing this on a screen, let me tell you, the entire premise of the story must be, the historians are inspired by the topic, and the true stories are going to be factual. Those have to be completely factual. They cannot be embellished, fabricated, etc. But the bluff story, that's going to be fictional. And, that's right. It is a bluff after all. But there will be a few facts in the bluff's story. We know that, of course, any good story is going to have some facts. So they will have things like, George Washington being the first president of the United States. That might come up. Who knows? But there will be a few facts, but the premise will be false. And those of you out there watching live, we ask that you please do not use the internet to fact check, because that, audience, is cheating.
Oh, man, that wouldn't be fun. We don't want to cheat.
It wouldn't be. It is not time to cheat, but speaking of time, I will tell you about time. Our round number 1 will be a mere 75 seconds long. Round 2 will be a minute long, and then round number 3 is 45 seconds. And at the end, we will determine who is a true armchair historian and who is the history bluff.
There it is again. It's the bluff sound.
That's the bluff sound. Now, we normally refer to these as lessons in our way of cataloging stuff, so that's appropriate because today's topic is the word class.
Ah, there it is.
Yes. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to kick off round number 1 with our first historian. But we can't do round number 1 before first we have to introduce the round tracker, 9,000.
There it is, right there.
Yes. That is an amazing piece of technology that you can follow how far we are along in each given round.
Right. If you're watching and not listening only.
If you're listening only, you're SOL. But
that's right.
You have me to narrate all the things that you can't see.
We like that. Okay. That's what you're here. You do, and that's what you do, Alan. Thank you.
That is what I do. I tell it like it is. Because I'm Honest Al, and I tell it like it is.
That's what they call him in the
the
history books.
Yes. So let's kick off round 1 with our round 1 intro, Adam.
Let's do it. Let's go to round number 1. Oh, that's the smell of a new round.
Yes.
For those with the smell technology.
We don't know what streaming service we're going to provide that on, but it's one of them.
We'll find out.
It's one of them. But anyway, Darren, you've got a spacey story that's out of this world.
I do.
I want you to kick it off.
It involves someone named Al, even.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, on the boom. The floor will be yours.
If I asked you to name the most famous physicist of the last century, I would hardly be surprised if you said Albert Einstein. After all, he won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1922 for his work on general relativity. He helped usher in the atomic era, and maybe even more famously, there's that photograph of him with his tongue sticking out, like that. But besides Einstein's influence on science and photography, there's his influence on arguably the second or maybe third most famous physicist of the last century. No, not Stephen Hawking. I'm talking about Carl Sagan. You know, the billions and billions guy from Cosmos. Sagan was born in Westchester, New York in 1934. And as we're all aware now, he was a very bright boy. He excelled in math in high school to the point that he was bored and unchallenged by the curriculum the high school could offer. And so when Carl was 16, his father, who worked for an influential publishing company, arranged for Carl to meet with John von Neumann, a professor from nearby Princeton in New Jersey. Von Neumann was impressed, and Carl Sagan began attending Princeton at the age of just 16. Wow, that's good timing.
Wow.
I'd say.
Some facts thrown in there, or are they? We don't know if Darren's just making this stuff up. Carl Sagan going to Princeton? I don't know. Darren, what do you think?
What do I think?
Drew, I do this a lot.
The same letter. Starts with the same letter.
When
Easy
I talk
mistake.
to these people in person, I never confuse their names. But when they're on my computer screen, I always reverse who is who. Drew, what do you think about Darren's story?
Well, I don't have a lot to say yet. Darren, he's talking like, oh, we all should know about Carl Sagan, and the fact of the matter is I don't know diddly squat about him. I did have the poster of Albert Einstein with the tongue out when I was in high school, so that's got to count for something. But so me not knowing anything, this could be true or total BS. So I'll wait and hear more.
Okay. Melissa, we heard some information about Carl Sagan and some other people. What's your take?
Yeah, so I'm kind of with Drew on this one, and that this story that's supposed to be out of this world seems a little down to earth right now. So I'm gonna wait and see. It seems like it fits. Facts about Carl Sagan sound right.
All right, they sound right so far, and they might be right so far. Maybe Darren has yet to bluff, and he's waiting for rounds 2 and 3. We don't know yet, but you know what we're not going to wait for is for Drew's turn to give us his story, round 1 chapter, starting with a cannon shot.
Okay, so let's talk about social classification, how it plays a part in traveling. There's first class, second class, and there's third class. This was true on the most famous ship of all time, the Titanic. Now, this is not a bluff. The Titanic sunk. We all know that. So I'm not going to tell you the history on how that transpired. But I do want to share the story of a few of the third-class passengers on the Titanic who all happen to be named Kate. First, some facts about the third-class passengers. When the Titanic left Southampton in April 10th, 1912, there was around 709 third-class passengers on board. Only 174 of those passengers survived. A third-class ticket cost about £7, and passengers were not allowed onto the first or second level decks. They slept on bunk beds in crowded cabins of 4 to 6 people, and there were only 2 bathrooms on the entire third-class area. Side note: 1997, the musical Titanic debuted on Broadway, and it featured 3 fictionalized versions of 3 young lasses named Kate, McGowan, Murphy, and Mullen. McGowan died at 42. She didn't survive the shipwreck. More on the other Kates later.
Wow. Drew talking about Titanic and people named Kate while Kate is not on the show.
No.
That is crazy. What are the odds? I don't know. Melissa, what is your take so far?
Yeah, my question right now is, if there were so many Kates on board the Titanic, then why did Kate Winslet have to play Rose? Why couldn't they change the name to make it fit? So so far that's my question. Is really a question for James Cameron.
Okay, Darren, what do you think?
I'm actually starting to get PTSD. Earlier this year, my JetBlue flight was canceled and I was forced to fly Spirit. And so far, he's described my experience, except for there was no one named Kate on board that I know of.
Oh, but there could have been.
There could have been.
You don't know. All right. Well, that's an interesting factoid. Or maybe Darren's bluffing. I don't know. Melissa, it's your turn to bluff and or tell the truth for round number 1 once you hear a big boom from a cannon.
Think that a classroom is made up of desks and a chalkboard? Well, think again. What better place to do a science experiment than the Leaning Tower of Pisa? Construction on this tower began in 1173, and the tower was built actually as part of a much bigger project that included a cathedral and a baptistry, and all of the best architects and engineers were on the job. But as we know, it wouldn't be called, it's not just the Tower of Pisa, it's the Leaning Tower. And it was because they built on subsoil without enough, piles or something beneath it to support it. So slowly the building started to lean. And then it took another 199 years to complete the building of the Tower of Pisa. So that's where our setting is for this story. Fast forward to the 16th century, and it became the site of a famous experiment by Galileo Galilei. So Galileo is known for proposing heliocentrism, which is the idea that the Earth revolves around the sun. But before that, he was actually a professor of mathematics at the University of Pisa. And that's where you'll have to wait for part 2.
Wow. All right. Well, Darren, you're already talking about a famous astrophysicist, so maybe I'll start with you. What's your take on Melissa's description of Galileo?
Yeah, it's a sort of a stunning coincidence that I'm actually going to be talking about mathematicians myself. And so in researching this story, I did indeed learn some more about Galileo. So far what she's saying tracks with my research.
Oh, well, sounds like a confirmation so far. Interesting. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, sounds believable. Same thing with Darren's Carl Sagan. Like I don't know enough about this. I certainly have heard of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The fact that it was like it took 199 years later, it was still being worked on. That's a sounds like the same people that work on the interstates. It just takes them forever to complete something. So
That's true.
Yeah,
true.
that is quite a while to work on something. But you know what we're not going to have to work on anymore is round number 1.
No,
that
we
means
won't.
it's time. Well, look, as you can see right there.
There it is, right
It's
there in
all
the round
full.
tracker.
That round 1 is full. That means we got to work on this round
Yes.
with a big old intro, Adam.
Let's go to round number 2. Hey, look at that. Here we are.
Number 2.
We're in round number 2. This is a good opportunity to remind us that this is a live show and people from the internet can say things,
That's
such
right.
as Chris out there saying that the tower workers were definitely paid by the hour.
Oh!
Just like our,
Yes.
Yes,
That's right. Several
probably
generations were paid by the hour, apparently. Unless there's a really old guy working on it at the end. I don't know.
Yeah, but he knows everything there is to know about the worksite, though. He's the go-to.
He's the go-to. He's like,
He's the go-to.
You're 199. What do you think? What was your favorite experience on this project? Let me tell you something.
Every time. Oh, don't get
My
him going.
favorite portion was laying down that uneven foundation soil.
Why is
That
he
was
starting to
great.
sound like Bill Cosby?
Bill Cosby's old.
It's
So maybe he was there. I don't know.
No. Oh, my God.
Well,
No.
we're gonna
Oh
start.
no.
We're gonna start round. We're gonna. We're
let's
gonna
edit
We're,
that part out.
We're going to do round 2. Yes,
We're gonna
we
start
are.
round 2 the same way we started round 1, which is with
Love it.
Darren, and
Let's
he's
go.
going to tell us a little bit more about Carl Sagan, I think, once we hear that shot.
Okay, rounds are
Okay.
shorter. Here we go.
All right, so in 1950, as Carl Sagan began his undergraduate work, Princeton was one of the top schools in the world for mathematics. John von Neumann, who recruited Sagan, was an important pioneer in computer science. In fact, something called the von Neumann architecture powers all of these computers that we're using today. And remember that Russell Crowe movie, A Beautiful Mind, and the famous mathematician John Nash? John Nash also started at Princeton at age 16, just 10 years earlier than Carl Sagan in 1944. And Nash got his PhD in mathematics in 1950, which is about the same year that Carl enrolled. So it seemed with this incredible environment that Carl Sagan was destined to be a great mathematician. But Princeton was also a top school for physics, having numerous Nobel Prize-winning faculty on the staff. And it was among those faculty was Albert Einstein, who had been at Princeton since the late 1930s. And it was Albert Einstein who would change Carl Sagan's destiny.
What? Albert Einstein and Carl Sagan in the same room?
Whoa.
That's crazy. Is it true? Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, he's certainly like connecting dots here to Einstein to Sagan and Sagan to Nash. But I'm just distracted every time he says this name John von Neumann. I think he's going to say John Bon Jovi, and it just is distracting. So I can't focus. So.
Yes.
I was going to go with John Voight, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It could be a Neumann to go there.
Oh,
Where's my
that's-
trombone? I need a
Right.
trombone for that.
Right
That was trombone worthy. We need at least
Deserved.
one per
Yes,
show.
it was.
Melissa, what do you think?
I'm starting to feel like these things aren't adding up about all these mathematicians. It just feels like, yeah, I know. It feels like
You get the rim shot.
like there's a lot of names here, and also Nash. Like there's a rock star last name Nash who's Crosby, Stills, and Nash, right? So it's another thing. It seems like there's a lot of people in this room, and I'm wondering if that's a tactic. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. That
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't know? We don't know. We haven't
We don't.
discovered who the bluff is yet.
Nope.
But
not
Drew,
yet.
we want to hear what your story is in round 2. We want some more information about Kate on the Titanic. And again, if Kate's listening, our cast member who is a self-proclaimed expert on Titanic, let us know what you think after the fact. Drew, we're going to hear more.
All right, so let's talk about the other Kates, starting with Kate Murphy from Longford, Ireland. This Kate made the fateful decision to follow her sister Maggie on the voyage so Maggie could reunite with her fiance in New York. The sisters were actually forbidden to go to the U.S., but rebelled. They ultimately packed their bags in secret and fled with some young men from Longford, not telling their families or friends. Kate and her sister were assigned a cabin with 2 other girls from Longford named Kate. Kate Gilnog, who was on her way to rejoin a sister in Manhattan, and Kate Mullins, who also had a sister in New York. Now, there were many other passengers from Longford on the ship, and many of them knew each other from church, school, etc. So even though they were restricted to the third-class level, the first few nights were spent partying with like true Irishmen and Irishwomen in the communal area. It was all smooth sailing until that night on April 15th. You know what's going to happen, but I'll tell you more about Kate in round number 3.
Hey. Interesting. We have a story that somehow involves going from Ireland to New York, and we know that the ship was built in Ireland, and its maiden voyage was going to New York. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I think about these duplicates. It's just a lot.
Oh, you got the record scratch.
There you go. I mean, they have agendas, but then they're all kind of partying together. I'll wait to hear a little bit more, but I don't know. There's a lot going on. A lot of Kates.
All right, Darren, what do you think?
I'm waiting for round 3, but I assume what we're going to find out is that Kate Murphy was really popular with the other Kates who she roomed with on the count of the fact that her bed folded up, which made a lot of room in that tiny cabin.
Come on.
Yes.
Ridiculous.
Murphy bed, ladies and gentlemen. Those who don't know, that is a Murphy bed. It would make sense to have a Murphy bed on a ship, I think.
would.
We don't know who invented that. I don't know who invented it. It could have been her.
It could have been her.
Next
God,
week.
I learned
Next
so
week.
much here. I learned so much.
Well, Melissa, we want to hear some more about the Leaning Tower of Pisa or Galileo or whatever it is you're going to tell us in round 2.
All right, so Galileo is a professor of mathematics at the University of Pisa. And one of the things that he is going to do is, as a good science teacher, he wants to do a demonstration. And his main goal was to prove Aristotle wrong. You see, Aristotle
Oh,
believed,
we have
a froze.
and a lot of people believed for a long time,
Which is good.
that when objects were in free fall, that, oh,
You're
Good.
good. Keep going.
back.
Keep rolling.
Go.
So his main idea was to disprove Aristotle. And Aristotle had the idea that basically as heavy as an object was, the heavier it was, it would fall faster. But Galileo wanted to disprove him. So what he did is he took 2 different spheres. There's a little bit of a debate about whether or not they were cannonballs or not, and dropped them from the Tower of Pisa. And they had different weights, even though they were the same size, to account for air resistance. And sure enough, even though they were different weights, they hit the ground at the same time because acceleration is constant.
fantastic. Fantastic. I learned that in physics class also. By the way, I recently checked that a falling object goes from 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. And the new Tesla Plaid goes from 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. So
Whoa.
it
Whoa.
accelerates faster than gravity. I found that.
Yikes.
Well,
Yeah, yikes is right. So try
How-
driving in one of those, by the way.
how did you pick it up? They're heavy.
Oh, no. There you
Boom.
Sorry.
go. Wow.
Boom. Darren, what do you think?
Yeah. I'm just picturing like Galileo, like, all right, it's time to go to church. Let me bring these cannonballs.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's the 1600s. It's probably the fashion at the time.
He dropped him from the Pisa Tower, though. Well, he wasn't
But
going to
it's
church.
it's part of a church. I've been there. There's the baptistry there.
Okay. See, I don't know much about the Pisa Church. I don't
Yeah,
know that.
You don't hear about the church Pisa. You hear
No,
about the Tower
this,
Pisa.
this tower is leaning. Oh, but there's a church service going on, so quiet.
Not a word. Not a word.
Drew, what do you think?
Yes, this is starting to ring a bell about like something I, was half listening to in science class or physics class in high school or whenever that was. At this point, I'm leaning towards Melissa's telling the truth.
Oh,
But I'll wait and see what happens.
all right. We still got round 3 to straight up bluff. We don't know.
That's true.
We don't know. Oh, what? Speaking of, there's three people went in round 2, Adam.
Hey, you know what that means, Alan?
I do.
It means we're going to round number 3.
3.
Oh.
Round number 3.
Oh,
This is
welcome
our
to round
final
3.
round.
It's the final round, round 3 of 3, and the timer is even shorter, as you mentioned at the top of the show. We have 45 seconds for these rounds to finish the stories.
It's almost done. We're going to wrap this up for you. Those of you who have short attention spans, you're almost out of the woods. And Chris or anyone else who wants to comment, let us know what you think so far. Who do you think's bluffing? We're halfway through. And we're going to bring up Darren again to top off, to start off round number 3. Darren, this is your final chapter to tell us some information about Carl Sagan, von Neumann, John Nash, or whomever else you want
John
to talk
Voight.
about.
Okay.
Here we go.
So, though by 1950 Einstein was not actively teaching at Princeton, he still held an office on campus as part of the Institute for Advanced Study. And as part of this role, he would give seminars on the mathematics of relativity, for which he won the Nobel Prize. And these seminars were open for any students or faculty to attend. And Einstein was about as famous back then as he is now, so Carl Sagan jumped at the chance to go to a lecture and see Albert Einstein talk. At the time, Sagan enjoyed astronomy as a hobby, but when he attended Einstein's seminar and learned how the mathematics of relativity applied to the motion of the stars, it was a life-changing event for him. He learned that he could apply mathematics to his hobby of astronomy, and that's when he made the decision to become an astrophysicist.
Whoa! Albert Einstein, according to Darren, inspired Carl Sagan to be one of the most famous astrophysicists of all time. So, Drew, what do you think?
I think this is just too easy. There's like the fact that all these people cross paths the way that Darren would have us believe. I feel like there's some stretches being taken.
So,
All right.
You've offended some audience members, Drew?
Yeah,
Angry, upset physicists out there.
Who knows? Maybe Drew's right. Maybe Darren's bluffing. We don't know, but it sounds like Drew's thinking there's some bluff going on here. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of with Drew on this one. I'm worried that Darren flew a little too close to the sun by mentioning so many different astronomers and things. So different mathematics. Thank you.
That's different. That's Greek.
That's Greek.
Oh, look at it.
It is.
Fair. Yes. Well, okay. Well,
See what you did.
yes, Icarus. Don't be ridiculous. Anyway.
Oh, no.
I got two trombones this episode.
He's trying to break records.
I'm gonna break that record. Just you wait, Drew. It's time for you to wrap up your story about the Titanic, about Kate, about whomever's on that Murphy bed with her. I want to hear the end of the story.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so on April 15th, the three Kates, and don't forget Maggie, had returned to their cabin after that evening's party. There was a knock on the door. A friend told them to get dressed because the engines had stopped. As they tried to find their way to the upper decks, they found the way either blocked by physical barriers or by crewmen redirecting them elsewhere. It was chaos. They finally got through thanks to a strapping Irish lad named James Farrell, who intimidated a crewman enough that he let them pass. But when they finally got to the upper deck, they had to deal with more crewmen blocking them, and while watching rescue boats go down like half filled. Thankfully, they finally were able to get onto some lifeboats. They all survived, but sadly, most of their male companions did not. That's the true story of 4 Kates and 1 Maggie.
4 Kates and 1 Maggie. I got a comment on Chris's comments, which was back during Drew's story, which he says that's almost like the Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, or to parallel that, the Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel coaching trees, talking about Carl Sagan being influenced by Albert Einstein. And if those of you who saw Oppenheimer, you know that Einstein talked to Oppenheimer as well. So that's fun. But back to Drew's story about the quadruplicates. And let's hear what Melissa's take is.
Yeah, it seems somewhat plausible, but I'm also like, all the blockages, I'm worried if that's a metaphor for like a writer's block, if you are the bluff. It could be, just saying.
Could be. Darren, what do you think?
I'm thinking that Drew is remembering fondly his time in Orlando when we would go and have a pint at Kate O'Brien's. And that was the inspiration for a story. I mean, other than, like, if your supposition is there were 4 people named on the Titanic, people named Kate on the Titanic, fine. I can believe that.
Chris thinks that Drew watched 4 weddings and a funeral just before the show. That's
also
Chris's
possible.
opinion. All right.
Also possible.
We want to hear the final chapter of our final story from Melissa. It's involving Galileo. It's in Pisa, and we'll see what else happens right now.
All right. So if you think the Leaning Tower of Pisa is a crazy place for a science classroom, just wait to what happens next, because this experiment was taken to another step further in 1971 when it was repeated on the moon. That's right. David Scott, who was an astronaut on the Apollo 15 mission, actually repeated the same experiment on the moon. He dropped a hammer and a feather from the same height, and because of the lack of atmosphere, there was no air resistance, and they landed at the same time at the surface. And his quote was, "And we thought there would be no better place to confirm findings than the moon. And so we thought we'd try it here for you." And that's on tape. And therefore, classrooms can really take any shape or size.
Very cool. Yeah. Even using the moon's gravity is consistent. Very cool. Darren, what do you think?
Did this astronaut lean over to drop these items?
God.
Or did he stand up?
You get your rim shot. You got one in, Darren.
Thank you.
That's all you wanted to know, Darren?
That's all I
Okay.
wanted to know.
Okay, Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, was the hard? I imagine the hard part was building the Tower of Pisa on the moon first.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
Took 199 years.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about something. How's that go, Alan? What's that guy sound like? Was he there too?
Bill Cosby?
I built a ladder that got us to the moon so that we can drop the feathers and the hammers and whatever else we want to drop.
The hard part was getting Bill Cosby on the rocket.
Well, he wasn't in jail back then.
No,
That's true.
Back then, it was a long time ago.
The
So,
before
all right.
times.
Well, that's all three of our stories and all three of our rounds.
Oh,
So,
it's a full
so-
round tracker.
it's a full round tracker. That means it's time for our audience to weigh in. And it's also time for our historians to weigh in. So, Darren, I want to hear your opinion. Who do you think is telling the truth? Who do you think is bluffing?
Well, I can verify some of what Melissa said. I do recall in physics class learning about astronauts dropping stuff on the moon, and I've heard of Galileo's experiment. There might be some other details in there I'm not sure of. But there's absolutely nothing I can verify about Drew's story about there were 4 people named Kate on the Titanic. So just from the fact that it's unprovable, I'm going to have to go with Drew.
Aha. Yes. That's right. Drew could easily have made that up because it's one of these stories that is unconfirmed. And why, pray tell, would they not have made a movie about this? It sounds like a wonderfully interesting story. But Drew, that's enough about me outing you. What do you have to say?
So Melissa's story, like, everything seemed very plausible, but then at the very end, she threw in the whole moon thing, which could have been like a classic, history buffs tactic to like throw in something that maybe doesn't seem like it fits the rest of the story. However, I go back to Darren and he just was name dropping like crazy. I mean, he went as far as like all these names. I thought maybe he was going to mention Stephen Hawking there at the end, but he didn't. But nonetheless, I gotta say Darren is the bluff.
Oh, Drew thinks Darren is the bluff. Melissa, what's your take?
Ooh, this is a tough call. So I think Drew's story does have a lot of Kates. So he wins on having the most Kates in a story. But I think it's conceivable. I think I know more than 4 Kates. So I think that it's fair. It's a common-ish name. I think it could be true. I think what makes me think that Darren is the bluff was all of the names. You have all of these bright pupils in one place and all of these stars in one place. And I'm just wondering if they're going to collide and dim. I don't know.
Interesting. Well, we have no opinions from the audience as of right now. But I want you're welcome to chime in the next few seconds, but I just want to reiterate, I think Drew voted for Darren, is that right?
Yes.
That's correct.
And that means Darren voted for Drew, and Melissa received 0 votes. So if Melissa was the bluff, that means she got away scot-free.
Or Kate free.
Oh! Free of Kate's.
Oh, it could happen.
We have Chris weighing in. He said, based solely on the number of people on the ship, Drew's story of 4 women named Kate is very plausible. Having said that, he is the bluff. Okay.
Okay.
That's what
All
Chris
right.
says.
So that's an audience vote for Drew.
Chris is voting for Drew. Drew is less provable. Darren is quite provable because he used a very public figure. And Melissa also used a public figure. But again, Melissa received no votes. I don't know for sure, but you know who knows is our tech Adam. Right, Adam?
That's right, Alan. I know. And I'm going to reveal who the bluff was for this episode of History Bluffs. Was your bluff Darren? Was your bluff Drew? Or could your bluff have been Melissa? Who would have gotten away with it scot-free? I will reveal it now. Your bluff. It was Darren.
Dun, dun, dun.
Wait a minute. That means Drew,
Yep,
who picked Darren,
that's right.
would be our winner today. Well done, Drew.
Hey, that's right. Well, actually,
So did Melissa, by the way.
also
Oh, Melissa
picked
did
Darren.
too?
Yeah, so it's
Well
yes.
done.
Yep.
Well
so
done.
They got it. They got it. So Darren's looks like Darren's story was not as believable as a bluff wished they would be.
No, but I was
it's
leaning
more
towards
relative.
Drew as who I thought was bluffing. So, and also Chris. Chris thought Drew was bluffing. So
That's
true.
true.
We're wrong.
So
Our
Darren
historians
fooled
were right.
Chris. Darren fooled
I did.
Chris, which is a celebration.
It's a win in my book.
Yeah, that's a win. That is a win.
Carl Sagan did go to college at 16, by the way, but he went to the University of Chicago.
Genius.
Ah, look at that.
Okay.
And he didn't meet Einstein, as far as you know.
He did not meet Einstein,
Wow.
but they were both alive at the same time.
Oh, missed opportunity.
Fascinating. Fascinating. I guess we probably would have known that if it were true, right? I don't know.
Who knows?
So I think that's about all we have to say for today, right? Right, Adam?
That is it, Alan. That's it. That's the wrap of the show. We've learned something and we've laughed.
Good.
All right.
Let's
Well,
cue the
Alan,
music.
Let's do it. Thanks so much for hosting the show, Alan. And big thanks to our historians, Darren, Drew, and Melissa. And remember, we are here every week on YouTube, on Twitch. Get us where you listen to your podcasts. We'll see you next time.